Hi, I'm Jim McCann, founder of 1-800-Flowers. We created this podcast to share the wonderful people we get to interact with, we get to meet, we get to know, and most importantly, get to learn from. So I invite you to join us on this journey here on the Celebrations Chatter podcast. This whole month is a month of friendship. What I mean by that, it's a month that we and the calendar suggest we should think about, explore, get self-reflective about the whole subject of friendship. And who better to talk to than someone who's become genuinely an expert on the whole subject of friendship from an academic point of view, from a social point of view, and that's Dr. Jan Yager. And thanks for being here with us today, Dr. Yager. You do have amazing credentials to talk about this subject. What got you interested in the subject of friendship? And tell us a little bit about your background in terms of how you bring a real science approach to the subject.
It was actually an outgrowth of my research into singles, because singles were telling me that what kept them sound and sane was their friendships. And at the time, we're going back a couple of decades, sociologists and psychologists were much more focused on romantic relationships, parent-child relationships. Friendship was seen as this frivolous extra, something that is important when you're a little kid. You've, gone from your parents' home to school. But once you settle down, you're supposed to not need friends. So when I had to pick a dissertation topic, I thought this was a fascinating opportunity to really look at it in a more scientific way. Is friendship that important or not?
So you're in pursuit of your PhD at the time, and you're a sociologist, and you decided to make friendship your dissertation subject. I think that's really smart and well received, and it sort of changed the course of your focus in your professional career. And not only are you a sociologist, but you're a writer, you're a coach, you're a speaker, you're an artist, you're an adjunct professor in the Department of Sociology at John Jay College, a place that we have both have connection to. I'm a graduate of John Jay College and currently serve on their board. So we have some intersection points there. And so you come about it with a really holistic point of view.
Well, it's interesting because my master's degree is in criminal justice. And I wrote a book on crime victims, which was an outgrowth of my brother's tragic murder when he was 23. I was a 20-year-old senior in college. And I'll be honest, my book, Victims, was groundbreaking. I went on the Today Show. People weren't talking about the rights of victims at the time. But the reason I switched to friendship is that spending 5 years investigating crime really took its toll on me.
I bet.
And I wanted to, do something that was, more positive. Of course, what I found out is that sadly, there can be a lot of negativity in friendship too.
Now, I wonder if you link those two subjects, I wonder if you did a social map of criminals and a like control group of people who don't engage in criminal behavior, the linkage of friends and friendships, it just stands to reason that people who are committing crimes are going to have a deficit in the friendship category.
Well, unfortunately, the research, we have to look at two sets of criminals, okay? You have the loner who becomes the serial killer who's, driven by that deficit. But then you have, unfortunately, a rather large group of young people who are brought into crime through their friendships.
Yep. So the whole gang situation.
Well, I interviewed a man who has become enormously successful, and I don't want to in any way take away from what he's achieved since he left prison. But he, in his interview for my students and for me, shared that he and his best friend became robbers and carjackers, even though they didn't need the money. But it was something that at the age of 16, they both got into. But on the other side of the coin is a brilliant bestseller called The Pact. And it's about three men in Newark, New Jersey, who, when they were teenagers, realized that that was going to be their path. So instead, they made a pact that they would watch out for each other and two became doctors, and one became a dentist. And they avoided prison and criminality.
So tell me, how important is friendship? It's something we talk about here quite a lot, and one subject that I like to explore for personal and curiosity reasons is the impact of adult friendships, in particular adult male relationships. It seems like that there's a deficit there as well, that adult men are not as good as women are at maintaining good, healthy peer relationships. It's the strains of time. It's the strain of stereotypes from generations ago, I think. It's family responsibilities. It's work responsibilities. We can make a lot of excuses for why we don't have a healthy enough set of friends. How important are friendships? Is there a gender difference, as I perceive there is, or how important is it to our physical and mental health?
Sure. Well, my most recent book, Friendgevity, and I said to my husband, why isn't the word friendgevity taking off the way my word friendships did? Thank you so much.
I'm holding up your book, Friendgevity, right now.
And even though the book helps to share how, even one friend can extend your life by 10 years, but people don't want to think about the end of life. They don't want to think about, what's coming next. But friendship is so important to our mental health, to our physical health. Researchers have found that even whether or not or how quickly you recover from breast cancer or heart disease is tied to whether or not you have friends. And it doesn't even matter if you're married or single. It's friends that are important. It's your peer group. But going to the gender differences, for better or worse, men are raised to be very competitive. And the one quality that especially close or best friendships need is openness, is confidentiality, but disclosure, self-disclosure. What I find with men, if I ask a happily married woman who her best friend is, she'll say, Carol, Sally. But if I ask a man, he'll say, my best friend is my wife. And that's because they're comforted by the fact that they don't have to risk anymore those self-disclosures. So when I did a CBS Sunday morning show on friendship, they interviewed a PR guy who had stayed close with his friends. But how did they stay close? They played basketball together once every couple of weeks. I know my daughter-in-law's father has, he's still working, he's a lawyer. He has a polka group, 10 years. They get together to play polka. So that's what men do. Women, we can say, hey, let's go have a cup of coffee and just chat. But men, I think 9/11 helped to open up men in a way that you hadn't seen before. Because men started openly crying, openly grieving, openly talking about emotional things. And it luckily carried over in a positive way to being less threatened by expressing those needs for intimacy beyond just romance.
And what impact I see here at Flowers, the impact that COVID had on friendships, it must be dramatic. And I guess in different ways, some ways good, some ways not so good. But at the very beginning of COVID, I was involved in a few groups that would convene, adult men would convene to chat on the phone. That's faded away because we can get back in person now. But we just needed to, we were under all different kinds of strain at that time, and it was just comforting to have a group of guys you could get together with and make a joke or hear someone's real issues and just convene. How has COVID impacted things, and how does working remotely for those who are in that kind of a role, which is only 20% of the population, working population? Everyone forgets that 80% don't have a choice. You're delivering those parcels for FedEx. You can't do that remote.
Sure.
What impact do you see from COVID and the consequent turnout of remote work for some people?
Well, I think remote work is definitely, whether or not it's mentally or even physically an okay option, has so much to do with someone's situation in terms of who are they living with. I want to go back to when I was single. I was married briefly from 20 to 23 and then single from 23 to 35. And when I had my job at Grove Press, and I was a single, recently divorced woman, no children, living alone, I got into the office so early and left so late that I was told I was making the CEO look bad. So if you're married, if you have a couple of roommates, remote work is, or even children that you, whether you use daycare or not, but you have people around, remote work can be very different. Also, I think hybrid is an option that a lot of people are seeing as a compromise. In all I've written, in addition to the friendship books, I've written books on work relationships. And even before COVID changed the course of how people do business in terms of remote work, you had people working from home for various reasons. And I always have suggestions about how to make it work, join associations, follow up. If you do Zoom or, use Microsoft Teams and do interviews, try to follow up in person. I interviewed a man just a few months ago who set out to meet every person that he had communicated with through Facebook and other social media. He went on a driving trip around the country. So, remote work has its benefits. You can save money on commuting. You can, literally work in your pajamas if you want to, if you're not on camera. But it also has downsides in terms of connections. And as you may know, so many of one of my girlfriends, I was just talking to her recently, Gail, we met at Macmillan Publishing decades ago, and from work connections comes those friendships. You talked about John Jay. The friends I have from John Jay were when I physically went into John Jay and in between classes went into the office and, hey, let's go have a cup of coffee. Let's have lunch.
Well, we just finished a big holiday period here. Everyone was busy and working hard. And just this morning, for example, we had a leadership meeting, a big group in a big boardroom. And what I saw happen in the 20 minutes after that meeting broke up were the different subgroups that formed in the hall, by the coffee machines afterwards, doing follow-up discussions of things that came up in that meeting. That doesn't happen as often or as spontaneously if you have to make an appointment on Teams or on Zoom to have those conversations. And that's what I think is missing when there's too much remote. I think the whole world is going to be a little bit hybrid, and the degree of hybrid is going to change over time. But I see how much more creative we are as a team, how much more productive we are as a team when we're in person. Now, we have offices all over the country, so lots of people are going to be dialing into that meeting. But the dynamic of what happens in the meeting, how humor can play a more important role when you're in person, how you can feel the feeling tone in the room is so much better in person. And then those subgroups, the follow-ups, the conversation on the way down the hall, the pat on the back, those things don't happen as easily, as comfortably, and as spontaneously if it's remote.
A lot of times friendship is within a certain age range. But a while ago, I was going to be going to the Frankfurt Book Fair, and I asked a woman that I had been communicating with remotely if I could stay with her because I wanted to get to Madrid to that book fair as well. And she just wonderfully said, sure, we have room. So when I got off the train, because I had gone to Barcelona before Madrid, I figured I was going to see a woman who was close in my age group. And it turned out she was 20 years younger. And, she put me up for a week. I got to know her fiance and we became friends. And those are kind of things that, it's harder for it to happen when it's just through a computer.
That raises an interesting question. I'm as you're saying that, I'm thinking about my own life, my own world. And it seems to me that if I have a friend who's 20 years younger, they tend to think of it as a mentoring relationship, but there are the same friendship elements there. I think we have a bias about who can be friends by age, by gender, and probably some other filters too. And we find other ways to maintain those relationships and define them differently so it fits with our expectation.
Yes. Well, it's interesting you say that because my book...
Is this another book?
Celebrating Friends and Friendship.
I'm one ahead of you. I got it right here.
It's dedicated to my friend, Joyce. Well, no, I dedicated my Around the World book to Joyce.
I'm having trouble keeping you up with you here. There's
Well, I'm up
50
to
of
my
them.
62. I actually dedicated my Around the World book to Joyce. This book is dedicated to my amazing friend, Joyce Guy Patton. Part of the reason is that since her husband passed away, she has helped to have a full life by going around the world on various trips. She's retired after 40 years as a principal and a school teacher in Philadelphia. And she does the trips with friends, various friends. And she also was nice enough to provide photographs from her trips. But Joyce is African American and I'm Caucasian. And I spent the 2 years before I met Joyce at Hofstra University, which in those days was largely Caucasian. And I had to move to Philadelphia, so I went to Temple University. And the important thing about people having a wide range of friends is exposure to those opportunities. So Temple University, which is much more integrated, even back in those days, I happened to sit next to Joyce. And we, by coincidence, and that's the exciting thing about friendship. Someone said to me recently, I was telling her about my friend Dara, and she said, "Oh, how do you know Dara?" And I'm like, "I've known Dara for like 25 years. How did we first meet?"
I don't know.
Yeah, well, Joyce and I, we happened to both take geology to finish up our degrees. And to this day, I don't know what possessed me to take geology as my required science course rather than something more practical like biology. But we sat next to each other for 2 months, and we were either going to hate each other or become friends. And she laughed at my jokes. And that was like, wow.
That's it.
We're friends.
Check the box. Now, what people who they get up in the morning, they fall out of bed, and they make two new friends. And other people who are shy and introverted who really struggle to form new relationships, or even if they start a new relationship by accident, they're sitting next to someone in a geology class. It's difficult for them to engage because of their own personalities. You see both of them and everything in between. What advice do you have to that person who has a difficulty forming new relationships?
Well, I think that it goes back to something happened in those formative years. And if they can't get beyond it, seek out either a friendship coach or even a psychologist or a social
There's
worker
such a
to work
thing?
with.
Friendship coaches?
Oh, yeah, I'm one of them. Yeah, there's quite a few of them.
What does a friendship coach do?
I have a
Another book.
list of many coaches in the back of the book in the resource section, because I don't want to just promote myself.
Oh, I see that.
Yeah, friendship coaching is different from counseling. Counseling, you have your degree in counseling, possibly a license if you're a psychologist, possibly an MD if you're a psychiatrist. So there you're really going at the core psychological truths behind someone's aversions. But the friendship coach, it's more informational. You're sharing some of the information, some of the insights about friendship. Even saying to someone who's shy about meeting new friends, you know what? That's very common. You're not the only one. It doesn't mean that you may not even be an introvert. Someone told you you're an introvert. So you can talk about ways to focus on that. I always tell people the 10-minute rule.
Go ahead. What's a 10-minute rule?
If you're invited to a party and you're shy, tell yourself, I'm going to show up and I'm only going to stay for 10 minutes and I can leave. And guess what? Almost everyone finds that after 10 minutes, they turn around and they're there for an hour. You can tell the hostess or the host that you are somewhat shy about meeting people. Could he or she bring you over to someone and facilitate an introduction? Sometimes it's as simple as that.
I like that one. So the first one is give yourself the 10-minute rule. So it's your ripcord to relieve your anxiety, and then confide in a host that you could use some help.
Exactly. And, hey, go to the drink table or the food table because that's where people are congregating. And I happen to tend to get water when I'm at things like that. But you turn to the person next to you and just start a conversation, especially, let's say it's a birthday party. and you don't know a soul. The only person you know is the birthday girl or boy, okay, of 75 or 60 or 40, whatever. So you just start the conversation by saying, how do you know so-and-so? Great opener. They tell you. Hopefully it's nothing.
So you got to do your work. You got to prep, and sometimes it makes sense to make notes in your prep. And the third thing on your list is have 3 opening lines that you could say to someone. Ask them about the birthday celebrant. Ask them about, do you live nearby? And be prepared. Do your work, you're saying.
And the most important thing is to get yourself there. Now, my book, Friendships, as you probably know, was my first major book after my dissertation, and it got me on Oprah and the Today Show and all these shows.
And now you've made it to Celebrations Chatter. Wow. Oprah to Chatter.
Listen, you're still around. Oprah is not doing her show anymore, so I'm in a good place. So when I was doing speaking engagements, especially bookstores, because bookstores, it's interesting, bookstores tend to get a different kind of crowd than libraries. I still love library crowds, but everyone would come up to me and in a hushed voice, they'd say, I have a friendship that didn't work out, like this was a terrible confession, because this fantasy that friendship should last forever has replaced the fantasy that marriage should last forever. And some friendships just aren't meant to keep going on forever. This woman contacted me and she said, when I was 12 years old, I had a friend who said something horrible about me. And to this day, I've never revealed the word that she confided, she said. But she said, I was so traumatized. And this woman was in her 30s at this point, with happily married with 2 teenage sons. I have never wanted to have another friend again. And,
wow.
And that's why I wrote my follow-up book, When Friendship Hurts, because why give that woman, that girl who's become a woman now,
all right, you mentioned this. We'll hold it up so everyone can see.
Why let that woman, that girl, win? In other words, she wins twice.
Yeah,
she
absolutely.
wins by hurting this young woman's feelings, and then she wins by turning her off to friendship. So I didn't get into a coaching situation with her, but one of the things we talked about is how could she work on getting new trust in new people? Because even though it's great, she has a happy marriage and sons that care.
You know what's going to happen? Those sons are going to move out. They're going to finish school. A husband's going to be busy with his stuff, and she's going to feel kind of lonely and be a burden to the relationships that matter to her, a son and a husband, because she needs them disproportionately because she doesn't have a round enough network. So she's doing a disservice not only to herself, but to a family in the long run.
And Dr. Taylor, who's a psychologist out of California, she wrote a book, The Tending Instinct. And it is a biological, scientific fact that we women need more nurturing. We need the coffee clutching. So, and Deborah Tannen, who's a brilliant linguist, she said, it's not what I said. She talks about how the husband comes home from work and he just wants to chill. And the wife, not understanding that that's not a rejection of her, thinks that there's something wrong with her marriage. What a happier marriage if, while he's chilling. She
didn't have that compressed need.
Well, she picks up the phone and calls Gloria and says, hey, what's new? I have 15 minutes or 20 minutes. Let's chat, So friendship is so wonderful, not only because it's powerful, but unlike romance, which can get very complicated. I'm luckily happily remarried 39 years, but our lives are so entwined financially. We've got 2 kids and, 5 going on 6 grandchildren. But friendship, you can go to a show and a lunch and, hey, we had a great time. No strings attached, no all this extra stuff. And you can have, some cultures do have, lots of romantic relationships. America tends to be ideally at least monogamous. But you can have 20 friends and no one says, oh, what's going on with so-and-so?
Oh, on the contrary, they're admired.
Exactly.
Right? Yep.
It's my sister's birthday.
Go to 1-800-Flowers.com.
They have tons of great birthday gifts.
Wow.
Wow. Happy birthday, baby.
Wow.
Yummy. I got to contain myself.
1-800-Flowers.
Celebrate the people you love.
You mentioned the coaching. Dr. Jan, at the beginning of the calendar year, when we write our newsletter, it's called the Celebrations Pulse, and then when we refer to it here on Chatter, what I counsel our community to do based on inputs I've gotten from our psychologists that are part of our advisory team here is to, at the beginning of the year, when you're making your resolutions, be they diet or exercise or reading or language you want to learn, whatever it is, take some time to do a relationship plan too. And we divide it into 3 groups. There's the people that you have good, healthy relationships now that you want to continue to invest in those and be deliberate, and underscore deliberate about it. Then there's a group of people who you used to have friends with. As you said, not every friendship needs to or should last forever. If they do, fine, great. But it's different times, different places. You shouldn't feel guilty about it, but you should be deliberate about it. And when I say deliberate, so you look at the 10 relationships that you've had that have waned a bit. Which of those, we counsel, do you make a point to say, I want to reinvest in that relationship, I want to rekindle it, and I'm going to be deliberate about it in the following ways. And then there's the third group, which is people you don't have a relationship, but you would like to. People at work, for example, people in your community, and make a list of who the 3, 4, 5, 6 of those people are as well. And then we encourage you to come back to that written list, online or on paper, at least monthly, and take a look at it and say, well, I said I wanted to become closer with Dr. Jen. She's so thoughtful and interesting, and we have so many points of intersection. But 2 months from now, I look and I said, I haven't done anything to increase the frequency of contact here. And there's this great article about a friendship that just came out from Europe. Maybe I should send that to her with a cover note. And so we lay out simple ideas and tools like that. What else would you add to that list at the beginning of the year to help people to be mindful, thoughtful, and deliberate about investing in and maintaining a healthy group of friends?
Well,
Go ahead. Which book are you going to refer to now?
This isn't my book, and I have no stake in this company, but I love my At a Glance appointment book.
Yep.
So, whether it's At a Glance appointment book or your whatever appointment book you're using, or some written way of not just having that list, but, putting it into the appointment book, like on Sunday at 4, I'm calling, Hector, if you're a man, to say hello. My husband and I are going to a fun event. I also have a small press. One of my authors has a event coming up. And I happen to remember that someone he used to work with moved to that community. So I suggested to Fred, why don't you call him? See if he and his family want to, hang out with us for a little while. And luckily he called him and he said, sure, we'll get together. So, having it specific, not just something that's open-ended, because open-ended, whether it's a career goal or, getting together with people, is too likely to, as you said, oh, it's been 2 weeks and nothing happened.
I also find, like with my kids, I counsel them to be, when they have the opportunity. So what asset do you have? Do you have a home access to a home or home in a resort area, out by the lake, out at the beach? Do you have a boat? Do you have a little sailboat or something to be the convener? Do you have a bike and you can say, hey, let's get together for a ride on Sunday morning? So I always encourage them to be the convener, not to wait to be invited. If you're the inviter, like you just said, hey, I'm going to the book party for so-and-so. I have 2 friends in that community. I'm going to invite them to come along and make it a point that we'll spend some time together at that event. I think that makes a lot of sense. Do you encourage your coaching activities the same kind of behavior?
Definitely. Well, I had a coaching client that was interesting. She really had, as her long-term agenda, was finding Mr. Right. But she was in her late 20s. She had already succeeded in her career. She had even bought herself a condo. And she actually was wise enough to say, before I find Mr. Right, I really want to find a couple more girlfriends. So what we did is we looked at her schedule. And, this is before COVID. So she was 5 days a week in the office, working late hours. But we looked at her weekend. And what was her weekend? Chores. So, making it a priority,
calendaring the activities.
Yeah. And
so you have an opportunity. So to make new friends, volunteer, to maintain your friendships, be deliberate about it. Make the time to happen.
Yeah, and she started going on activities where the likelihood of connecting were more likely, what was a possibility. And also, years ago when my kids were in that stage I talked about, I hadn't gone back into my career as much as I was going to once they not only became older, but, literally left the house and, have their own lives. So I met a woman, I really liked her, and I wanted to have someone that I could have lunch with once a week, during the day when I had some free time. And she was very honest with me. She said, this is not good timing for me. And then she outlined all the things in her life that were pulling on her. So I think that's important for people to find out, where are you in someone's, layout? Do they have such a strong network that it's not going to be good timing? Have they just moved to a new community and they're going to be thrilled? I invited to this event that I told you is coming up. One of my former students, she's now, I think, almost 30 years old. She moved not too far from where this event is going to be. And I said to her, because I figured, when you move to a new community, she moved from New York to Connecticut. She probably doesn't know many people. I said, would you like to meet us at this event? So that's the other part of it. When people are moving, they're usually most open to new connections. And that's very important because if the timing isn't right, you could be the best match as friends in the world, but it's just not going to work out.
Dr. Jan, tell me about cross-gender, mixed-gender relationships. It seems to me they're especially tricky if one or both of the people are married.
Yes. Well, August Strindberg, over 100 years ago, said, the great playwright, that he didn't believe.
I used to hang around with Gus.
That he didn't believe opposite sex friendships were possible. They've become more possible. And as a sociologist, I've looked at why. And one of the reasons is that dormitories became co-ed, which wasn't even true when I went to college. So
I'm still shocked at that, by the way. That's how old I am.
Right. People were able to, networks of friends. People were getting engaged and married later. So there were these cross-friend networks going out to the movies as groups and not in dating situations. But over the years, I've either as interviews or as a coach interviewed quite a few of the cross-sex friendships. And one stands out to me. This was an interview where a woman had been a wonderful male-female friendship for years. And she just didn't understand why, when her male friend got married, his new wife put her foot down and said, I'm not comfortable with you keeping that friendship going. So she said to me, I don't have any hope that his marriage is going to last. So I said to her, well, keep an open mind, because the fact that she's being territorial right now, this is a new marriage. Maybe as they feel more secure as a couple, maybe down the road. Also, if she got coupled off, so it's two couples and not just a couple and a third. But it can be very, very tricky. There's so many examples where it crosses the line and it backfires, but there are successful ones and people swear by it.
I find, as I'm old now, feeling young but old, that it's easier for me to have friendly relationships with women because I think this social threat isn't there. Does that make any sense?
That's very interesting. Well, I think that also it depends on the age of the people. And I remember thinking of a woman I interviewed, and she told me that she liked having male friends, and this is going to shock you. She went out of her way to flirt with them, and she liked them flirting back, and she was happily married. She would never take it further, but she liked that, having that element to it. So,
see, I think that just adds a whole lot of risk to it.
Yes.
Misinterpretation, going down the wrong path, as you said before. I think that adds a lot of risk. Let's touch on the impact of social media. We can't vote yes or no on whether or not social media exists. It's here. It's only going to become a more important part of our lives. I expected and have been mightily surprised at the impact social media is having on our mental health and having on relationships. At my stage of life, it's only been a benefit to have, in terms of relationship maintenance and development, to have access to social media. I understand, though, that for young people, teens, preteens, that social media is having a devastating effect on them socially, especially when it comes to relationships and, more importantly, friendships. Your thoughts on the impact of social media along that range and beyond?
Well, it's interesting, but what you made me think about is we need to have a class on how to appropriately text and send emails and post for these kids as young as 5 to 10. Don't even wait till middle school. They have to understand the impact of what they're sending, and they don't have filters. Older people have filters. So one of my favorite parts of my computer is my deleted from. And I write a post, whether it's on LinkedIn or Facebook, I reread it, and rather than send it, I cut and paste it and put it in this file, a separate file called deleted. And, there's the post. Young people don't have that. They're like, they write it, they send it. So one woman at the time, she was in her 30s, she shared with me that she had to go off Facebook for a whole year because her friends were trashing her husband in Facebook posts, and it was just too painful. But after a year, she managed to talk to them outside of Facebook, and they set some new ground rules. No negative stuff about other friends or family members, and that seemed to work. So but I think that in my friendship writings, I give people some rules. I remember.
Go ahead. Let's hear it.
Okay. Well, when my son got engaged, I was so proud that he and his fiance picked up the phone, called anyone who was a primary person, including best friends, to share the news. Never share important news on your social media network before those few people in your circle have been told, because what makes us feel special? That we're
prioritization.
Right, exactly. So you want to know first what's going on in someone's life. So that's one rule. And some of the other rules are to be aware. If you've had a party and you didn't invite people that are going to be offended, is it really worth posting about that party and risking that you're going to hurt people's feelings? If the party already happened, you don't have to post about it. Also, as someone with a crime and victimology, not only a background, but I still teach actively and write about and research in this field, do not put information in social media that puts people at risk.
Give us an example.
Well, someone, posts that they're going away for 3 weeks. There was a tragedy recently. Someone posted on one of the social media, I won't say which one, but the location where this celebrity was going to be. And someone with mental illness tracked the person down, and it had a tragic outcome. So,
I think the underlying rule there is think first before you act, for all the things you're talking about here.
And also kids have to understand that, bullying is not acceptable online or offline. So, one of the challenges with social media is because there's this false sense of anonymity. And there's a famous case of anonymity where the parent of a girl who was a previous friend of a young girl, she was 12 at the time, the parent posed as someone else. And tragically, the young girl felt so hurt by what
I remember that.
And, it was a famous case because she was prosecuted for impersonating.
Appropriately so.
And the young girl sadly committed suicide. So, it's a powerful, powerful thing, friendship. Denying it. One of the things that I have to help people with is obsessing over failed friendships. This drives people nuts, especially if they didn't see it coming or they don't understand why someone wanted them out of their life. And, it's so important to understand that in most cases, it's not about you. It's about what's going on in their life.
And even if it is about you, get over it.
There's other fish
You are
There's
what you
other
are. You can
friends in the
change.
sea.
You can change what you are. Exactly. Exactly. And lamenting over it is not going to change it. Be aware of it. Maybe there's something about yourself you'd like to try and change, but you are who you are, and not everyone's going to be your bestie forever.
Right. And let me just part with saying, in one of the reasons I wrote Celebrating Friends and Friendship is because I had two close friends who sadly passed away. And, I'll be honest, I am very blunt. I say to my husband, I'm in search of replacements for them. It's not
Yes.
easy. I've interviewed, quote unquote, interviewed people, and but you can't. How do you replace 35-year, 30-year friendships?
Well, you can't, but a friendship of 3 months is better than no one. And you're on the way to building a relationship that's of value to both of you.
But the interesting thing is that I still luckily have a core of friends who are still around.
But you have to work to maintain that circle because people are going to move away. They are going to, there'll be a problem. You can't say, I have my friends, I don't need new ones. Yes, you do.
Right. What I was going to say is I got used to a certain number for all those decades, and, not having that same number of close friends, because you can spread it around. If so-and-so's busy, you can call so-and-so. And if,
So this friendship thing is not for the faint of heart. You have to be deliberate about it. You have to be honest with yourself about what your personality traits are, what your interests are, what your time commitments are. And you have to be thoughtful and deliberate about investing in and maintaining a group of friends. It could be 1, 2, 3, it could be 20, but it's not going to happen by accident for most of us.
Right.
And you need to be deliberate about it. And you're so deliberate about it, you've written 62 darn books about it.
No, not all about friendship. Time management, some novels, children's books. No, but what I want to say is this. One of the key sociological approaches to friendship is that it is an optional role. And because of that, despite or in addition to everything you've just said, you've got to have fun. You've got to have fun.
What about that friend who just wants to tell you about everything that's going wrong in their life?
Exactly. They're not going to be on your list of people to call when,
Eliminate them from the speed dial.
No, you may not do that, but it's like, oh no, so people have therapists, people have mothers, people have husbands, all these other people to, go into that real deep stuff with. And, just think about, it's okay to want to just, get together and have a good time and et cetera. But,
Well, Dr. Jan, you've taught us all a bunch of good things today. And now that I'm looking through your book, Celebrating Friends and Friendship, and I see all the resources you're giving there, I didn't know that there were friendship coaches. It makes sense. I'm glad that you do what you do, and there are others who do it. And here in July, when we're talking about friendships and the importance of them, the role they play in our lives, I think you've added so much to the contribution. I know this won't be the last time we talk. And I hope I get to audit your class at John Jay, because I'm back there from time to time, and it'd be a hoot to hear you on your feet doing your thing.
Oh, sounds great. Love to have you in my class. Thank you.
Thanks, Dr. Jan. Dr. Jan Yager, an expert on friendship. Not too many people I've heard with that title before, and she's just demonstrated why. Thanks for sharing your thoughts, ideas, and your wisdom with us today, Dr. Jan Yager.
Sure. And, I invite people to go to drjanyager.com. Lots of information there. I have a blog that I add to a lot. And, there's a contact us form. Say hello.
Great. Thank you, Dr. Jan.
There's no day like a birthday. It's a time to celebrate. Every year, every wish that brought you to this point. Wrapped in birthday love, toasting a future as bright as the moment before you. The best gift is each other.
Well, I hope you enjoyed what you heard, and I know I'll be sharing it forward. I hope you get to as well. Let's keep the conversation going. Follow me along on Twitter at Jim1800Flowers and on LinkedIn at Jim McCann. Hope to talk to you soon.